remind you to put your microphones on mute, please. Okay. So you're very welcome to this evening's presentation or orientation for parents. About half an hour, and just want to let you know a little bit about the background about the disability service. We're currently based in the Arts Building in room 2054, but we will be moving to Printing House Square, which is on the other side of the campus near Pierce Street Guard Station, hopefully at the end of this year. And there's currently 8 full-time staff in the disability service, and then we also have student interns who work with us as well. And at the moment, we support over 1,800 students at Trinity with a disability who are using the service. This is just a little chart just to show you the increase in the number of students who have been registered with us over the last few years. So in the last 10 years, we've gone from 800 students registered with us up to 1,800 students. So the student numbers are increasing by about 100 students every year. So the service is rapidly expanding. This is just a breakdown of the different disability types. From last year, the first year undergraduates in 2021, the proportion of disability types there, the largest group was mental health, and then SPLD is specific learning difficulty, SOI is a significant ongoing illness, ASD is autistic spectrum disorder, DCD there, dyslexia, and then there's physical, neurological, deaf, hard of hearing, blind, visually impaired, and speech. So the proportion there of students that make up the service from the incoming students last year is just shown in that chart. So your new role really as a parent of a third level student with a disability, I'm going to speak a little bit about that. I mean, I assume for most of you, it's either the first time you have a child who's a student in third level, or perhaps the first time you have a student with a disability in third level. But either way, I mean, it's a new role for you in relation to your son or daughter coming into this, into third level now with a disability. And, you know, we appreciate that that's, you know, a challenge, and there can be a bit of nervousness and a bit of anxiety about that. So we do have an awareness of that, and we have some supports and advice for you around it. One thing that we did really was a few years ago, we asked a parent of a student to do an interview and go through that very process about their concerns. And there's a good video here. It's about 11 minutes long. I'd recommend it. Harry O'Brien is one of the students, and he's a graduate now and an intern. He came in to do management science and information systems. So there's a video there online which goes through the very same perspectives that you're in now of a child or a young adult coming to third level who has a disability. So I'd recommend that. So one of the things that is key really for the ethos of our service is the difference of approach really from primary and secondary school in relation to supporting students with disabilities. What we would call really a transactional model. The third level we like to think of as more transformational. So what that means is that instead of just receiving supports or being given supports, we actually involve the students from the very start in engaging with their supports, and we look to their independence, their learning independence, and then longer term in terms of planning their career and their educational journey. And so what that means at a practical level is we don't just automatically continue on supports that were provided in the past. We look to see, you know, what is needed at this level, for the individual and the course requirements that the student is at. And if supports are needed, we do provide them, but we do try to provide supports that are focused more on independence of learning and also employability skills. And that's really a difference of approach from, as I said, primary and secondary school. So we do try to provide clear and effective support systems at all stages in the student journey. From the transition into higher education and then through education, and that might mean placements or internships or study abroad, and then from graduation then to employment. So we're thinking really long term about a student's educational journey and the supports they might need. There's really good ways for parents to support students. I would suggest really that you start with some of the links here and familiarize yourself with the language and the jargon that that Trinity brings and that higher education brings. The language is quite different, and your son or daughter or your children will be speaking with saying things that are really familiar, different types of language, lectures instead of classes, professors instead of teachers. The language is very, very different, and the experience of who to contact. It's not just a central location. There's lots and lots of different areas and departments and units within Trinity, and just communicating with one doesn't automatically mean that everyone in the university is going to know. So there is a lot of information in the parent handbook, which is linked there. There's a step-by-step guide which contains a lot more information than we're going to cover here this evening, and focuses really on the steps towards applying for reasonable accommodations in Trinity. So even though you've applied to Trinity and maybe even applied for accommodation, or you've applied through DARE and come in through the CAO through a DARE route, you still have to separately apply to the Disability Service for reasonable accommodations. And that's done through the student portal, what's called mytcd.ie, and students need to do that. So quite a few students have done that already, but there's a lot of students that haven't done that. And you'll be able to do that as soon as you have a student record. You've accepted your course and you're invited to register, and you've created a student record. You should be able to apply to the Disability Service. So other than the Disability Service, I'd encourage you to familiarise yourself with other Trinity student services, and as needed, students should reach out to those supports as well. Really, it's important, the primary means of communication between Trinity and students is through the TCD email. So initially we would have communicated, and Trinity would have communicated to students by the email address that they used in their CAO application. That's before they had a student Trinity ID. But now that they're Trinity student, they will be given a Trinity student email, which ends with @tcd.ie. And that is the primary means by which we will communicate with students. So we do understand that students still sometimes communicate to us by their personal email. As much as possible, we try to orientate them back towards their Trinity email. And that's crucial for making sure that you're informed about what information is going on, what the communications are out to the students. Just to go through some of the main factors that really create difficulties in academic work. The experience of secondary school, is very much day to day and week to week, where things are broken down and managed by the various different teachers, and homework is given on, as I said, a day to day or week to week basis. But in higher education, students are much more responsible for their own learning. And work given is not sometimes to be back for several weeks, if not the end of the semester, which for students, coming into the start of a course in September, if they're not due something until the end of October or November, the first impression might be, oh, that's great, you don't have to worry about that for ages. That's the first mistake that you make. You need to start working on things and planning your time and managing your time, straight away. So things like checking when modules, the module handbook for dates and deadlines, that's crucial because the weeks pass by very, very quickly, and most students are not going to get reminders, or very easy to miss any reminders that might be there. Sometimes they're only given out once, or they're only given out in the handbooks. So you really have to check up on these things, and the work does pile up very, very quickly, and it's not always possible to cram it all in, and certainly that's not something we would recommend. So like things like not checking the timetables or the lecture notes, so the tutorial notes for dates, that's a common mistake. Avoiding the tours of the library, or avoiding the use of the library, and then ultimately not knowing how to use it. That's a huge mistake as well. Students can sometimes create a fear about using the library. Certainly encourage you to get used to that. As I said, beginning work too late, or getting panicked over competing assignments. You realize that once you start the work, there's actually a huge amount of work there. And if you've got 2 or 3 due at the same time, it's not too difficult to do. So just going to admit a few more people in here. Okay, if students do get into difficulty, particularly students that are registered with us, most lecturers are very understanding and accommodating. If there's a valid reason for why someone might need an extension, be it a medical reason or a reason related to the disability, it is possible to get an extension. But you shouldn't plan for an extension from the start. You should really only request an extension if something has actually gone wrong. And you probably get an extension maybe the first time you ask, but if it becomes a habit, that will quickly stop. So don't plan for extensions, but they are there, I suppose, in somewhat of an emergency if you really do need them. And come to us, the students should come to us to seek assistance with that if it looks like it's going to be an ongoing problem. Students should also get to know the staff on their course, in their department or in the school, and also the support services. So the support services are really around supporting the students, with individual issues, but the advice and guidance from the department of the school around academic matters or what flexibility might exist, that's key as well. And a common mistake as well is that thinking you can get a 0 for not submitting and make it up with exam marks. That doesn't work either. You do have to submit assignments. Sometimes it's crucial to submit something, otherwise you can get into difficulty at the end of the year, regardless of how well you do in the exams. Just to remind you as well, there is a chat function there, so I see there's 5 or 6 queries coming in, so please do, if you have any questions, put them in there. And as I said, we'll have time at the end for some discussion and questions, and I will stop the recording then at that point. So what supports are available to students in Trinity? So broadly speaking, we can break them down into those categories there: academic support, assistive technology, career planning, exam accommodations, library supports, occupational therapy, campus accommodation or accommodation in Trinity Hall, and case coordination, which is between services like the health centre and the counselling service as well. So we're going to speak a little bit more about some of these. First of all, the specialist academic support, that's provided on a one-to-one basis, and students can be referred for this support by their disability officer. And really that's around looking at individual timetables to suit the individual and the course requirements that the student is taking, guidance on essay structure, revision techniques, for example, and referencing and projects, and strategies for reading academic journals and for texts. So that might be something that some students need some support with. And there's also support around using online learning technology, which obviously in the last few years, that's hugely increasing and will probably be a significant feature into the future. There's also additional resources available in the disability service through the Blackboard module. The Blackboard module is the online means that the university delivers all the course material through. And a lot of assessments have been done that way as well through COVID, through Blackboard. I'm going to hand over to my colleague, Claire Malone, at this point to talk a little bit about occupational therapy supports.
Thank you, Declan, and good evening, everyone. My name is Claire. I'm a senior occupational therapist with the Disability Service in Trinity, and I'm one of a team of occupational therapists, or OTs, that we have working within the service. Some of you may have encountered OT before, maybe through things like assessment services, but it can look a little bit different in a college setting. As occupational therapists, we're focused on the day-to-day tasks and activities that make up the student role. And the occupational therapy support within the disability service is a practical support that looks at all of those things for the student. And we look to work with the student on, I suppose, developing the skills and the strategies to manage all aspects, all elements of the student role. This can include the transition and just finding their feet within the first few weeks of college, navigating the systems, getting their support set up, maybe connecting with their academic department for the first time, establishing a routine, so learning to adapt to the new timetable of being in college, and the difference between second and third level, and how the routine might actually have an impact on them. Managing their disability and their well-being while they're in college, so looking at any strategies that might alleviate the impact of a disability, ensuring that they have a support system in college. I know many students will transition out of services like CAMS when they come to college, so it's really important that their support network is well established at this time of such a significant transition. We support students to get involved in clubs and societies and extracurricular activities. So college, of course, it is very much focused on academic life, but there is so much more to college, and we do encourage students to make the most of all of the opportunities that are available to them. But we understand that sometimes that can be a challenge if you're trying to manage the additional difficulties that can come along with the disability. So we would provide support with that. Strategies for making the most of the college environment, so the physical environment itself, navigating their way around the campus and adapting to the different learning spaces, as well as the social environment of, I suppose, interacting with their lecturers, with tutors, and with other staff and services around college. Balancing their academic demands with other activities. So again, the understanding that college is very much about academic life, but also they may be engaging in some of those extracurriculars. They may have a job, they may have other activities outside of college, and I suppose learning to juggle all of those things and find a routine and a system that works for them. And then finally, strategies for work placements, internships, and part-time jobs while in college. So some of the professional courses will involve work placements. Some students will do an internship as part of their course. They go on Erasmus. So that can also be a significant part of their student journey that we would support with. So as you can see, OT covers quite a broad range of areas. At the moment, we're providing online and in-person meetings. So typically our initial meeting with a student might be online, and then follow-up in-person meetings on the campus will be available after that. And then also we are this year doing some outreach support to Trinity Hall, which is our student accommodation. So for any students who will be living out in halls, I suppose another element for them will be adapting to independent living. Maybe they're living in a new country, they're living in Dublin for the first time from the country. So, you know, managing things like cooking and the grocery shopping and the laundry, and even just life out in halls and student accommodation. So how they manage their housemates, etc. So you can switch to the next slide, please, Declan. So my role within the Disability Service, I lead on our neurodivergent supports. So I'm responsible for our neurodivergent project within the Disability Service. And that really looks at particular supports and resources for students that would fall into the neurodivergent group. So that would include autism, ADD or ADHD, dyspraxia, and specific learning difficulties. So this project really aims to look at the existing individual supports that we provide for these students, as well as the disability service resources as a whole, and looks to improve upon those and ensure that the needs of the students are being met. So that project and my role does involve providing ongoing individual support plans, establishing supports when students initially transition into college and they have their needs assessment, but also to look at progression, to look at any changing needs and any, I suppose, new experiences that students might have to navigate as they go through college. The Neurodivergent project does involve a drop-in, that is a physical in-person drop-in in the Disability Service office, and that will be taking place on Tuesdays from 2 to 4 p.m. So for any students within that group, I'll be available in the office on Tuesdays, and they can come and drop in. They don't have to book an appointment, they don't have to call in advance. I'll be available in the office if they have any queries, if they need assistance with anything. That's what our drop-in is for. Of course, we understand for you as parents, and particularly parents for students in the likes of the autism group, you probably will have played a big, if not the biggest role in their support system so far. And I know Declan has spoken about the transformational environment that we intend to create. But of course, we don't expect that students will have the skills or the confidence to manage all of their support needs completely independently as soon as they step foot on the Trinity campus. So part of that drop-in really is to provide a resource to you as parents. So again, I'll be in the office on Tuesday afternoons, so that is a drop-in that you can avail of. But you can also contact me through our Ask DS email. You can request a phone call, and a lot of, I suppose, the interaction around particular students may need to be with the student's involvement or with their consent, but for this to act as maybe a resource for you if you have queries, if you'd like to know more information about the supports, I'll be there to advise. Another element of our neurodivergent supports is we have a weekly autism group program. So this has been taking place online for the past year, and over the first semester initially, we'd intend to continue it online on a weekly basis. And this is both for incoming students who are still finding their feet in college, and also it would involve some of our continuing students. So the weekly group, it's a really nice space for students to connect with each other. So there's a nice element of peer support, but then also I will offer some additional support, and we'll address some of the areas that I might cover individually with students in an occupational therapy setting, so they can both avail of an opportunity to socialize and connect, but then also there will be guidance and advice on supports. And then finally, just to mention again that there will be the OT outreach support in Trinity Hall, and I will be out there on Wednesdays. So every Wednesday students can access appointments with me there in halls. So our supports, our outreach supports in halls is part of our student support hub. So that will involve occupational therapy and academic support. So as I mentioned, I'll be out there on a Wednesday every week, but my colleague Kieran, he will also be based in halls, and he'll be available on Friday. So again, students can avail of our occupational therapy supports across all of the areas that I have mentioned. And then our academic support specialist, Alison Doyle, she will be available in halls on Thursdays, and students can avail of in-person meetings with her. She's a fantastic support, and she works with students on the academic skills, so things like creating study exam timetables, using the online technology resources to improve their writing or how they manage their assignments, looking at strategies for academic reading and research, And then also any specific skills such as how they manage their essay structure, revision, referencing, or when the time comes when they're doing their thesis, she can support with that. So I'll hand back over to you, Declan.
Thanks, Claire. Yes, so further support systems then in Trinity. So every school has an academic liaison officer, and that's an academic member of staff who has a key role in bridging between the school and the disability service. So they take an active role in ensuring that any disclosures that are made through the systems that we use, the language we use there is a lens report. That's the document that discloses a disability and the support needs to the school. The liaison officers have responsibility there for ensuring that that's distributed throughout the school, and that more importantly, the school acts on those support requirements. Every student is assigned a tutor, and that's an academic member of staff who has a pastoral care role for their students, and anything in relation to an academic appeal, a decision that the college makes that the student wishes to appeal, if you want to change course, if you want to go off books, if you need to repeat a year, if you failed an exam and you want to query it, there's a whole set of applications and queries that are formal communications between the students and the college. There's a tutorial system in relation to dealing with that. And they're also kind of a signposting service to all the other types of support. So students are encouraged to access their tutor as a first point of contact. So students who are registered with the disability service, although they might be getting support directly from one or more staff in the disability service, they can still avail of their tutor as needed. There's also a health service on campus, and that's staffed by GPs, nurses, psychiatrists, physiotherapists, and additional staff there in relation to student health. And a lot of the services there are provided free and small charges for additional supports. They've been very busy over the last year since the vaccination started. So the health service is available on campus. And there was one of the questions there in the chat in relation to counselling. There is a counselling service on campus that's available for all students, but it is limited in, generally speaking, there's a limited number of sessions per student per year. So if anyone does need additional counselling support, they generally refer out outside the service back to the HSC or the local area. But anyone can access the service and gain counselling support for a limited number of sessions. That's just to keep the service open and available to everyone. And there's also a career service on campus, and there's a lot of work going on in careers in relation to introducing placements and internships for different courses, so that students have the opportunity to get work experience. And we ourselves in the disability service engage with the career service as well around supporting specifically students with disabilities in relation to things like disclosing a disability and additional support needs for employment, and just developing career skills around job applications, CVs, interviewing, etc. Additional supports then as well on campus. There's a chaplaincy that's interfaith, and then there's also a students' union as well. And all of the orientations that happen next week, students will be introduced to all of the student services and meet with the student union officers as well. So just wants to just plug our website here and all our supports available. Pretty much all of the things that we do in the service, all of the information that we have and all of the supports we provide, it's pretty much all on our website. There's the website there. Once you just put in tcd.ie/disability, you'll find that there's a page there obviously for new students, and then there's supports in place. That middle tab there, application for reasonable accommodations, that gives you a step-by-step guide on how to apply to the service so that you can register with us and get invited for a needs assessment appointment. So we have contact information there as well, and our email address is askds@tcd.ie. So students or parents or anyone who has a query is encouraged to contact us if they wish to do so. But there's a lot of information on our website, so that's certainly a first point of call. Moving on then as well, the drop-in has already been mentioned as well. We're returning pretty soon, hopefully, to a physical drop-in where people can come in. At the moment, it's online. Hopefully, we'll be transitioning over the next few weeks back to the more traditional walk-in and drop-in service. But at the moment, it's booking through an online support. And we encourage to do that at any point. I mean, they can email us or they can just book an appointment at very short notice and meet with any of the staff for a few minutes just to ask any kind of question. That's fine. That's no problem at all. As I said, the email address there is at the bottom, askds@tcd.ie, and also phone numbers as well, a landline and a mobile number. Just to give you a little bit of background in relation to, I suppose, what sort of issues might arise in the future in terms of progression and difficulties in terms of completion. Over the last 10 or so years, we've kept some data on the outcomes of students by disability type. And this is meant to be reassuring. It's not meant to scare anyone or cause concern. Most of this information is relevant to public data that's published anyway. If you look at the bottom right-hand corner, you'll see the overall graduation rate is 79%, and that compares, depending on what year you look at, it compares to about 83 or 85% for the general student population. So the completion rate is very, very high. Students, though, sometimes do have difficulty, and they sometimes take an extra year or they have to take a year out to complete. And most of those completion rates per disability type are very close to the college average. There is 3 there that are highlighted in orange, which have dipped below a little bit. The ASD group, the deaf, hard of hearing group, and the mental health group. So they would be groups that would be considered maybe at slightly higher risk of having difficulty in terms of completion. So that's why we do, as much as possible, try to provide additional supports. One of the ways that which we provide additional supports really is just flagging in advance that students in those categories may be aware that they should be encouraged to seek those supports. As Jared said earlier, to the students, when we meet students originally, we want them to tell us information and seek support and be advocates for themselves, but we're not mind readers. So hopefully, the opportunity to meet with parents today is a key indicator that, if they need a push to come and look for help if they get into difficulty, that's what we're here for. And most students do very, very well, as I said, over that. That's data over a kind of a 12-year period, 79% of all the students that were registered with us have graduated. So that's, I'll move on into the next slide. So some of the ways then really that you can, I suppose, engage with your son or your daughter as a parent or guardian. There's obviously a lot of nervousness at the moment, I'm sure amongst yourselves and amongst the students as well. That nervousness is a mixture of anxiety and excitement, but that will soon settle down after the first few weeks. But it does longer term, it does take probably at least the first full year before students actually become fully familiar with what's going on, because you have to go through, there's 2 semesters, you have to go through the first 12 weeks and then get the exams done and then start the next 12 weeks and new lectures and new modules and new set of exams. So it does nearly take the full year before you kind of get a full Trinity experience, and it can take at least that length of time, if not even into the second year, before students start to become familiar with it. We ran reorientations there last week for second year students returning because they haven't had a campus experience. So it's taking second years now, time to adjust as well. So the key thing really there is to keep the contact going with your son or daughter, like from one term, to the next. And the thing is, you won't be told everything, so you'll just have to ask, asking the key questions, looking at the timetable, when did they attend, when are assignments due, when are exams due. Sometimes you have to break it down and ask the key questions, and sometimes the students themselves might not know, and as frustrating as it might be to be asked the questions, probably in the long term they'll thank you for keeping them on track, because it can be very overwhelming to keep on track of everything. There is key information about COVID updated on the HSE website and also on the Trinity coronavirus website. So we just got a notification today that the intention is very much to return as much as possible to normal teaching, while also to the guidelines in terms of social distancing and proper hygiene and mask wearing, etc. But we're on track to return, I think, hopefully in the next couple of months. I think in November, there should be a return to normal, but we still have to follow the government guidelines. So as much as possible, timetables for first years will be out sometime next week or the end of next week. And most students will have some elements of online learning, particularly the larger lectures with those large numbers of people. It's not possible to hold them in single lecture theatres. So larger courses and modules with larger numbers of people on them will continue to have online lectures. Small groups will have small teaching in small lectures where possible, but there will also be tutorials and also be allowed on campus. So I think, yeah, that's it. I'm going to stop the recording there. Just confirm when that's done.